Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, I've got some absolutely wild stories pulled straight from the depths of Reddit. Perfect for drifting off to sleep. Our first story comes from someone who discovered that their neighbor has some very creative theories about property ownership and delivery services. I've been living in my current apartment for about 3 years now. It's a pretty standard complex with maybe 40 units spread across 6 buildings. Nothing fancy, but the location is good and rent is reasonable. I work from home most days, which means I'm around to receive packages pretty regularly. I order online fairly often. Groceries sometimes, work supplies, the occasional impulse purchase, standard modern living stuff. The delivery drivers know the complex well enough that packages usually end up at the right door without much confusion. About 6 months ago, new neighbors moved into the unit directly next to mine. We share a wall, and our front doors are maybe 10 feet apart in the hallway. I introduced myself when I saw them moving in, helped carry a few boxes, had the usual brief neighbor conversation about where we work and how long we've been in the area. They seemed nice enough. A couple in their early 30s, both working professional jobs, no kids or pets. The kind of neighbors you hope for in an apartment building. Quiet, friendly, normal. The first weird thing happened about 2 weeks after they moved in. I ordered some work equipment, a monitor and keyboard, nothing expensive but stuff I needed for my home office setup. The tracking said it had been delivered and left at my door around 2 in the afternoon. I was in a meeting at the time, so I didn't hear the delivery or check the door immediately. When I finished my call about 30 minutes later, I went to grab the package, and it wasn't there. No box, no delivery notice, nothing. I figured maybe the driver had made a mistake with the apartment number. It happens sometimes. I checked with the neighbors across the hall and the units on either side. Nobody had seen any packages or had anything delivered to them by accident. I contacted the delivery company and they confirmed the package had been scanned as delivered to my address at 2:17 that afternoon. The driver's note said it was left at the front door of my unit. They opened an investigation but basically told me I'd need to wait 3 business days for them to complete it. I filed a claim with the retailer explaining the situation. They were helpful and said they'd send a replacement once the delivery investigation concluded. Annoying, but these things happen. I didn't think much more about it. 3 days later, I was taking out my trash, and I noticed my neighbors had their door propped open while they were moving some furniture around. As I walked past, I saw my monitor box sitting in their living room. Not a similar box. My exact package, with my name and address still clearly visible on the shipping label. I stopped and looked more carefully. The keyboard box was there too, both of them just sitting open next to their entertainment center. They were using the monitor. It was set up on their desk, connected to their computer, clearly already in active use. I knocked on their open door and asked about the packages. My neighbor looked at the boxes, then at me, and said, "Oh yeah, those were delivered to our door by mistake. We figured we'd return them when we got a chance, but we'd been really busy with the move." I pointed out that they'd already opened both boxes and were actively using the monitor. She said they'd needed to test it to make sure it still worked before returning it, since it had been sitting there for a few days. She said they wanted to make sure it hadn't been damaged before they gave it back. I asked why they hadn't just brought it over immediately if it had been delivered to their door by mistake. We lived 10 feet apart. It would have taken 30 seconds. She said she'd meant to, but kept forgetting. And besides, they weren't sure which unit it was supposed to go to, since the hallway numbers can be confusing. The address was printed clearly on the label. My apartment number, my name. She was looking right at it while she said this. I asked if I could have my packages back now. She seemed hesitant, like this was an unreasonable request, but eventually agreed. She started disconnecting the monitor from her computer, and I noticed she was annoyed about it, like I was inconveniencing her by taking back my own property. She handed over the monitor and keyboard, both already unboxed and clearly used. No apology, no acknowledgement that taking someone else's packages and opening them was weird. Just a sort of irritated compliance with returning things that were never hers in the first place. I thanked her, brought my stuff back to my apartment, and set everything up. The monitor worked fine. The whole interaction was strange, but I figured maybe it was just an honest mistake, blown out of proportion by moving stress and poor judgment. 2 weeks later, I ordered some books. 3 of them, all related to a work project I was doing. They were supposed to arrive on a Tuesday. Tracking confirmed delivery at 1:30 in the afternoon. I was home. I heard the delivery driver in the hallway. I heard something being set down. I waited about 5 minutes to let the driver leave, then opened my door to grab the package. Nothing there. I checked the tracking immediately. Delivered to my door at 1:32. Photo confirmation showing the package at what was clearly a door in my building's hallway, but not my door. The door in the photo had a different wreath hanging on it, my neighbor's wreath, the one I'd seen when their door was open. The package had been delivered to their door again, but this time I'd been home. This time I knew the driver had been there within the last 10 minutes. There was no reasonable explanation for my package to vanish that quickly. I knocked on my neighbor's door. She answered, and I could see my package sitting on her entry table right behind her. The distinctive brown shipping box with my address label clearly visible. I asked about the package. She looked at it, looked at me, and said that was delivered to her door, so it must be hers. I pointed out that my name and address were on the label. She said the label must be wrong, because it was delivered to her door, and delivery drivers don't make mistakes. I asked if I could just have my package since it was clearly addressed to me. She said she needed to verify that first because she didn't want to give away something that might actually be hers. She closed the door before I could respond. I stood there for a minute trying to process what had just happened. Then I knocked again. She opened the door looking annoyed. I said the package was definitely mine, it had my name on it, and I'd like it back now. She said she understood I thought it was mine, but she needed to check with the delivery company first to make sure there hadn't been a mistake. She said she'd look into it and let me know. Then she closed the door again. I contacted the delivery company immediately and explained the situation. They confirmed the package had been delivered to the wrong unit but was addressed to me. They said I should contact the recipient and ask them to return it or contact building management. I knocked on her door a third time. She didn't answer. I could hear someone moving around inside, but nobody came to the door. I sent her a text message. I'd gotten her number during the initial neighbor introductions, saved it in case of building emergencies or package mix-ups, which apparently I'd been smart to do. I explained the situation in the text and asked her to please return my package. She responded about 2 hours later saying she was checking with the shipping company and would get back to me. The next day she texted saying the shipping company confirmed the package was delivered correctly to her address, and therefore it was hers. This was obviously not what the shipping company had said, since I'd spoken to them myself and they'd confirmed it was my package delivered to the wrong unit. I replied, explaining this and asking again for my package back. She said she'd opened it to check if it was hers, and it contained books she'd been planning to order anyway, so it worked out fine. She'd keep them, and I could order replacements if I needed those specific titles. I sat there staring at this text message, trying to figure out if this was really happening. She'd taken my package, opened it, acknowledged that it contained books, claimed those were books she'd wanted anyway, and decided she was keeping them. I went to her door and knocked. She answered. I asked for my books back. She said she already told me she was keeping them since they were delivered to her address. I said they were addressed to me with my name on the label. She said the delivery location determined ownership, not the label. If packages were left at someone's door, they belonged to whoever lived at that door. That was how delivery worked. I asked if she seriously believed that delivery drivers accidentally giving packages to the wrong apartment meant the wrong person got to keep them. She said if drivers made mistakes, that was between me and the delivery company, but she wasn't giving up items that were left at her door. I told her that was theft. She said it wasn't theft if the items were delivered to her property. I said they weren't delivered to her property. They were delivered to her by mistake with my address on them. She started closing the door. I asked one more time for my books. She said no, closed the door, and that was it. I contacted building management and explained everything. They said this was a police matter, not a building management issue, but they'd send a notice reminding residents that taking packages not addressed to them was illegal. I filed a police report. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic, but explained that package theft cases rarely resulted in any action unless there was significant evidence or value involved. 3 books worth maybe $60 total didn't meet the threshold for them to pursue it actively. He suggested I try small claims court if I wanted to recover the value. I contacted the retailer and explained the situation. They refunded my purchase after I provided the police report number. So I got my money back, but I still didn't have the books I'd needed for my project. I figured this had to be the end of it. 2 incidents of her taking my packages was weird and frustrating, but now that building management had sent a notice and I'd filed a police report, surely she'd stop. A week later, I ordered some clothing. Nothing expensive, just some basic work clothes I needed. The package was delivered on Thursday afternoon, around 3. I watched the tracking obsessively this time. The moment it showed delivered, I went to my door. The package wasn't there. I walked the 10 feet to her door and knocked immediately. She answered. I asked if a package had been delivered to her door by mistake. She said no. I asked if I could check, since I'd just watched the tracking update and knew it had been delivered within the last 2 minutes. She said I couldn't search her apartment and closed the door. I knocked again. She yelled through the door that she'd call the police if I kept harassing her. I called the delivery company immediately. They contacted the driver, who confirmed he'd left the package at a door in my building but couldn't remember exactly which unit. He said the doors all looked the same and he might have mixed them up. I went back to her door and knocked again. She opened it looking angry and holding her phone. She said she was calling the police because I was harassing her. I said I was trying to get my package that was delivered to her door by mistake. She showed me her phone screen where she'd already dialed 911, she said. If I didn't leave her alone, she was reporting me for threatening behavior. I left and went back to my apartment. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers knocked on my door. My neighbor had called them saying I was banging on her door and demanding to enter her apartment. I explained the whole situation. The previous package thefts, the police report I'd already filed, the current package that had just been delivered. The officers listened, checked my previous report, and went to talk to her. They came back 20 minutes later and said she denied having any packages that didn't belong to her. She said I was making false accusations because we'd had a personal dispute. She told them I'd been harassing her for weeks over imaginary package problems. The officers suggested I use a different delivery address or install a camera to document deliveries. They said without proof she'd taken my current package, there was nothing they could do. I ordered a camera that day and had it shipped to my workplace. I installed it over the weekend, angled to show both my door and hers. Not inside her apartment, just the hallway area where packages would be left. 2 days later, I ordered some kitchen items. Tracking showed delivery at 11 in the morning on Tuesday. I was in a meeting and couldn't check the camera immediately. When I reviewed the footage an hour later, I watched the delivery driver approach with my package, look at the unit numbers, and place it directly in front of her door. He'd delivered to the wrong apartment again. The timestamp on the delivery was 11:14. At 11:16, my neighbor's door opened. She looked down at the package, picked it up, and brought it inside. She clearly saw my name and address on the label before she took it. I had video evidence, clear footage of her taking my package that was addressed to me. I saved the video, made a backup, and knocked on her door with my phone ready to show her the footage. She answered. I asked if a package had been delivered to her door. She said no. I showed her the video. She watched it, then said that package was delivered to her door, so it was hers. She didn't care what the label said. I explained that video evidence of her taking packages with my address on them was proof of theft. She said the video showed a package being delivered to her apartment and her retrieving her own delivery. That was all it showed. I said it clearly showed my address on the label. She said the camera quality wasn't good enough to read labels and I was making assumptions. I pulled up the zoomed-in screenshot where my name and address were clearly visible. She looked at it and said that didn't prove anything. Packages delivered to her door belonged to her, regardless of what the label said. That was the law as she understood it. I told her that was absolutely not the law. She said she'd researched it and found multiple sources confirming that delivered items belonged to the property owner where they were left. She had documentation supporting her interpretation. I asked to see this documentation. She said she wasn't obligated to share her research with me. I said I was filing another police report with the video evidence. She said she'd tell them I was doctoring videos to harass her. I left and filed a new police report online, uploading the video evidence. An officer contacted me the next day and said he'd reviewed the footage. He agreed. It showed her taking my package, but since the driver had delivered it to her door, it was difficult to prove criminal intent versus a legitimate mistake. I explained this was the 4th time. He said pattern of behavior might help, but I'd need to document multiple clear instances of her taking packages she knew weren't hers. One video wasn't enough, even with the previous reports. He suggested I contact the delivery companies and request they confirm my unit number with drivers. He also suggested I add delivery instructions specifying my exact door and asking drivers to verify the unit number. I added detailed delivery notes to every account I had. Specific unit number, description of my door, request to verify address before leaving packages. I sent messages to the major delivery companies explaining the situation and asking them to note my address for accuracy. For 3 weeks, nothing was delivered to the wrong door. My packages started arriving correctly. I thought maybe the detailed instructions had solved it, or maybe she'd stopped after seeing the camera. Then I ordered some supplements, vitamins and protein powder, probably $80 worth of stuff. Detailed delivery instructions were on the order. The driver was supposed to verify my unit number. Tracking showed delivery at 2 in the afternoon on Wednesday. I checked my camera immediately. The driver had placed the package directly in front of my door. Correct delivery, exactly where it should be. At 2:07, 13 minutes after delivery, my neighbor's door opened. She stepped out, looked both ways down the hallway, walked to my door, picked up my package, looked directly at the shipping label, and carried it into her apartment. She'd stolen my package from my door. Not a misdelivery this time. She'd taken it from the correct location after the driver left. I saved the video immediately and backed it up to 3 different locations. Then I knocked on her door with my phone ready. She answered and I asked if she'd seen a package delivered to my door. She said no. I showed her the video of her taking it from my doorstep. She watched the whole thing without expression. Then she said that package had been sitting in the hallway creating a safety hazard. She'd secured it to prevent theft and was planning to notify me once she figured out who it belonged to. I pointed out she'd looked directly at the address label before taking it. She said she was trying to see if there was any identifying information that would help her return it to the owner. I said the identifying information was my name and address printed on the label she'd been staring at. She said the hallway lighting made it difficult to read labels clearly. She brought it inside to examine it properly. I asked if I could have my package now. She said she needed to verify it was mine first. I showed her the video again where my address was clearly visible on the label as she carried it inside. She said video quality wasn't sufficient for verification. I asked what verification she needed, beyond video evidence of her taking a package with my address on it from my door. She said she'd open it and check the contents against my order history to confirm ownership. She closed the door before I could respond. I stood there processing the fact that she'd just told me she was opening my package to verify it was mine, which made no sense on any level. I called the police non-emergency number and explained the situation. I said I had video evidence of my neighbor stealing a package from my doorstep and refusing to return it. The dispatcher said she'd send an officer. 2 officers arrived about 40 minutes later. I showed them the camera footage. They watched it twice, confirmed it clearly showed my neighbor taking a package addressed to me from my door, and went to speak with her. They were at her door for maybe 15 minutes. When they came back, one of them was holding my opened package. He handed it to me and explained that my neighbor had maintained she was securing a package from the hallway for safety reasons and had been planning to return it. The officers told me they'd warned her about taking packages that didn't belong to her, but since she'd returned it when they asked, they couldn't arrest her. They suggested I consider civil action if the behavior continued. I asked if video evidence of someone stealing from my doorstep wasn't enough for charges. They said technically she could claim she was trying to help, and proving criminal intent was difficult. Since she'd given the package back, they couldn't charge her with theft. I thanked them, and they left. My neighbor's door stayed closed. The package she'd returned was opened, items removed from packaging, and clearly examined. My supplements had been opened, bottles unsealed, contents partially spilled. I documented everything with photos, noted it in my police report follow-up, and contacted the retailer. They sent replacements after I explained the situation and provided the police report number. The next week, I ordered some office supplies. The package was delivered correctly to my door at 10 in the morning on Monday. I was home but in another room working. At 10:23, my camera showed my neighbor taking the package from my doorstep, looking at the label, and bringing it into her apartment. Again, I knocked on her door immediately. She answered, holding the package. I asked why she'd taken it. She said she saw it sitting in the hallway and was concerned about theft, so she secured it for me. I pointed out she'd taken it from my doorstep, which was theft. She said she was preventing theft, not committing it. I asked for my package. She handed it over, still sealed this time. I took it and said I had video of her taking it. She said the video would show her helping a neighbor. I said the video showed her stealing. She closed the door. I filed another police report with the video. An officer called me back and said they'd spoken to her. She claimed she was trying to help. Without proof of intent to permanently deprive me of my property, they couldn't charge her. The officer suggested I get a locking package box or use a different delivery address. He said proving theft when she kept returning packages after confrontation was difficult. I ordered a locking package box, the kind delivery drivers can open with a code but stays secure after they leave. I installed it next to my door, added the access code to all my delivery instructions, and sent notifications to every company I ordered from. For 2 weeks, deliveries went smoothly. Drivers used the lockbox. Packages stayed secure, My neighbor couldn't access them. I thought the problem was solved. Then I came home from a rare day at the office and found my lockbox sitting in front of her door. The bolts had been removed from the wall. Someone had unscrewed it, moved it, and left it at her apartment. I knocked on her door. She answered, and I asked why my lockbox was in front of her door. She said it was blocking hallway egress and creating a fire hazard. She'd removed it for building safety. I pointed out it had been bolted to the wall next to my door, not blocking anything. She said it extended too far into the hallway and violated fire codes. She'd researched building regulations and determined it needed to be removed. I asked why it was now in front of her door if she was concerned about fire safety. She said she was securing it until building management could dispose of it properly. I picked up my lockbox and brought it back to my apartment. The mounting holes in the wall were stripped. She'd removed it so aggressively that I couldn't reinstall it in the same location. I contacted building management. They said residents could install package lockboxes as long as they didn't block hallway traffic. Mine hadn't. They sent her a notice about tampering with other residents' property. I installed the lockbox in a different spot with better anchors. 2 days later, it was removed again. This time I had it on camera. She'd unscrewed it while I was out, carried it down to the building dumpster, and thrown it away. I showed building management the video. They called her in for a meeting and warned her that removing other residents' property could result in lease violations. She argued the lockbox was an unauthorized installation that violated building codes. Management showed her the section of the lease allowing package lockboxes. She said that section didn't override fire safety regulations. They explained it didn't violate any regulations. She said she'd consulted with fire safety experts who disagreed. Management told her to stop touching my property or they'd begin eviction proceedings. She said she understood. I bought a third lockbox and installed it with security screws that required special tools to remove. It stayed in place for 3 days before she managed to get it off the wall somehow. This time she left it in front of my door, disassembled into pieces. I gave up on the lockbox. I started having everything delivered to my office or to pickup locations. No more home deliveries at all. It was inconvenient, but better than dealing with constant package theft. This worked for about a month. Then I was sick one day and worked from home. I'd ordered cold medicine the night before with rush delivery to my office, but I'd forgotten to change the address. It defaulted to my home address. The package arrived at 11. I heard the delivery, but couldn't get to the door fast enough. By the time I opened it, the package was gone, and my camera showed my neighbor taking it from my doorstep 8 seconds after the driver left. I knocked on her door, too sick to deal with this diplomatically. She answered and I asked for my cold medicine. She said she didn't have any packages. I said I had video of her taking it. She said I was mistaken. I showed her the timestamp from 30 seconds ago. She looked at it and said that wasn't her in the video. I pointed out it was clearly her, wearing the same clothes she had on right now. She said, the person in the video looked similar but wasn't her. I was too sick to argue. I called the police non-emergency line again. An officer arrived, watched the video, confirmed it showed my neighbor taking my package, and asked her to return it. She maintained it wasn't her in the video. The officer asked why someone who looked exactly like her, wearing the same clothes, would be coming out of her apartment. She said maybe she had a twin. She didn't have a twin. The officer knew she didn't have a twin because he'd responded to previous calls. He told her to return the package or he'd charge her with theft. She went inside and came back with my cold medicine, opened and with pills missing. She said she'd found this in the hallway and was trying to determine who it belonged to. She had needed to open it to check for identification. The officer took my statement about the missing pills, documented the open package, and filed a theft report. He told her this was her final warning before criminal charges. I took my partially empty cold medicine and went back to my apartment. I was too sick and tired to pursue it further that day. The next morning, I woke up to a notice taped to my door. It was from building management. My neighbor had filed a complaint claiming I was harassing her, documenting 15 instances of me knocking on her door and making false accusations about packages. She'd created a detailed log of every time I'd knocked on her door to ask about my packages. She framed it as harassment and requested a restraining order to prevent me from contacting her. I met with building management and showed them all my police reports, all my camera footage, and my documentation of every package theft. They reviewed everything and said my neighbor's complaint had no merit, but they couldn't stop her from filing for a restraining order if she wanted. She filed for a temporary restraining order, claiming I'd been harassing her for months over imaginary package thefts. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. I hired a lawyer and brought all my evidence. Video footage of her taking packages from my door, police reports, delivery confirmations, everything. The judge watched about 5 minutes of combined footage before stopping the hearing. He asked my neighbor if she'd taken packages addressed to someone else from their doorstep. She said she'd secured packages that were creating hazards. He asked if she'd returned them. When asked, she said she'd returned them after verifying ownership. He asked why verification was necessary when the packages had address labels. She said labels could be forged and she needed to protect against fraud. The judge denied her restraining order request and suggested she stop taking packages that didn't belong to her. She argued she was providing a community service. He said it was theft and told her to stop. That was 4 months ago. Since then, I've had every single package delivered to my office or to pickup locations. I haven't had anything sent to my apartment. The camera is still installed and still recording. Last week, I had a friend send me a test package with a tracking device inside, something worthless. Just an empty box with a tracker, addressed to me and delivered to my door. The package arrived at 2 in the afternoon. At 2:09, my neighbor took it from my doorstep. The tracker showed it sitting in her apartment for 6 hours before she threw it in the building dumpster. I now have video evidence and GPS tracking data of her stealing a package and disposing of it. I filed another police report with all the evidence. The detective who reviewed it said they'd be moving forward with theft charges. My neighbor was arrested last Tuesday. She is being charged with multiple counts of mail theft. Her lawyer is arguing she was trying to help and had no criminal intent. I've been contacted by 2 other residents in the building who said she'd been taking their packages too. They'd assumed the packages were lost in delivery and never suspected a neighbor. Now they're filing their own reports. The court date is set for next month. I have to testify about the pattern of behavior and present all my evidence. My lawyer says the video footage and tracking data should be sufficient for conviction, but we'll see. I still won't have packages delivered to my home. Even if she's convicted and evicted, I don't trust the delivery drivers to get the right address consistently. It's easier to just pick things up elsewhere. That story is over. The level of commitment it takes to repeatedly steal packages, despite video evidence, police warnings, and building management intervention, is genuinely remarkable. Some people really will develop an elaborate personal philosophy to justify taking things that obviously don't belong to them, then act victimized when confronted with their own behavior. Speaking of neighbors with creative interpretations of property boundaries, this next story involves someone who apparently believes parking spaces are transferable assets. I live in an apartment complex where parking is assigned. Each unit gets one designated spot with their apartment number painted on it. It's a simple system that generally works without problems. I've had the same parking spot for the 2 years I've lived here, right in front of my building, convenient and close to my door. My spot number matches my apartment number, and it's clearly marked. Last month, new neighbors moved into the building next to mine. Different building, different parking area. Their assigned spots are on the opposite side of the complex from mine. About a week after they moved in, I came home from work and found someone parked in my spot. A car I didn't recognize. Definitely not a guest since they'd parked in my numbered space instead of visitor parking. I parked in a visitor spot temporarily and left a note on the car asking them to move. The next morning, the car was still there. My note was gone, but the car hadn't moved. I contacted building management. They said they'd send a notice to the vehicle owner and would have it towed if it wasn't moved within 24 hours. That evening, there was a note on my door. It was from my new neighbors explaining that they'd swapped parking spots with me. They preferred my spot because it was closer to their building and offered me their assigned spot in exchange. There was no question in this note, no request for permission. Just an announcement that they'd decided to swap spots and expected me to use theirs now. I went to their apartment and explained that I hadn't agreed to swap parking spots and asked them to move their car. They seemed confused by this response. The man said they'd already moved their stuff into my spot, so swapping back would be inconvenient. I asked what stuff they'd moved. He said they'd put their parking permit in the windshield and adjusted their routine around using that spot. Moving back now would disrupt their schedule. I explained the spots were assigned by building management and couldn't just be swapped without approval. He said parking spots weren't that important and I should be flexible about helping new neighbors adjust. I asked them again to move their car from my spot. The woman said they'd already told me I could use their spot, so everything was even. I said I didn't want their spot. I wanted my assigned spot. They said I was being unreasonable about parking and closed the door. Their car stayed in my spot. I called building management again. They had the car towed the next morning. I got my spot back and that seemed like the end of it. 2 days later, their car was in my spot again. Another note on my door saying they'd decided the previous towing was a misunderstanding and they'd gone ahead with the parking swap they'd proposed. This time, they'd also put a sign in my spot saying reserved for unit 247 inches, which was their apartment number. They'd made an actual physical sign and posted it like that gave them authority over my parking spot. I had their car towed again. Building management sent them a formal warning about parking violations. They responded by filing a complaint saying I was harassing them by having their car towed from what they considered their new spot. The next week, I found their car in my spot every single day. Every day, I'd call for it to be towed. Every day, they'd put it right back after retrieving it. Building management called them in for a meeting and explained that parking spots couldn't be swapped without documentation and approval. They said they'd submitted a request to swap spots. Management said no request had been received. They pulled out emails they'd sent not to management but to me, announcing the parking swap. They seemed to believe that emailing me about their decision was the same as official approval. Management explained the actual process for swapping spots required both parties to submit formal requests and sign documentation. They said that seemed like unnecessary bureaucracy for a simple parking arrangement. The property manager spelled out that they couldn't just decide to take someone else's parking spot. They asked why not if the person had another option available. This continued for 3 weeks. Their car in my spot, me having it towed, them putting it right back. They were spending hundreds of dollars in towing fees rather than just parking in their assigned spot. Finally, building management told them the next parking violation would result in lease termination. They stopped parking in my spot after that, but left angry notes on my windshield about my inflexibility and poor neighbor relations. Last week, I found out they'd approached 4 other residents trying to swap parking spots, looking for someone with a spot they liked better. Nobody agreed, but they still sent everyone emails announcing various parking swaps they'd decided on. That story is over. The determination to keep parking in someone else's spot, despite repeated towing and formal warnings, is impressively stubborn. Some people really will spend more money fighting about something than it would cost to just accept reality and use their assigned resources. Speaking of people who create complicated systems for simple situations, this next story involves a roommate who apparently believes household chores require detailed economic analysis. I've been sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with my roommate for about 8 months. We split rent 50-50, divide utilities evenly, and generally have a pretty standard roommate arrangement. Nothing fancy, just 2 people sharing a living space and trying to coexist reasonably. My roommate works in finance and is very into optimization and efficiency metrics. Lots of spreadsheets, detailed tracking of expenses, that kind of personality. It doesn't bother me. Everyone has their quirks. About 3 months ago, she suggested we formalize our chore division to make sure everything was distributed fairly. I agreed that made sense. We sat down and made a list of regular household tasks and divided them up based on preference and schedule. I took trash and recycling since I work from home and can take it out whenever. She took bathroom cleaning since she's particular about cleaning products. We alternated dishes and vacuuming. Simple system, seemed fine. 2 weeks later, she presented me with what she called a chore equity analysis. She'd tracked the time she spent on each task, calculated hourly rates based on what professional cleaning services would charge, and determined that her assigned chores had a market value of $63 per week, while mine were worth only $41 per week. She'd made a spreadsheet with color-coded charts showing the value disparity. According to her analysis, I owed her $11 per week to balance out the difference in chore market value. I asked if she was seriously suggesting I pay her money to make up for the fact that bathroom cleaning takes longer than trash duty. She said it wasn't about time exactly, it was about economic value and ensuring fair distribution of household labor costs. I pointed out that we'd divided chores based on what worked for our schedules and preferences, not based on some theoretical market rate for cleaning services. She said that might have been our initial framework, but she'd identified an inefficiency that should be corrected. I told her I wasn't going to pay her for doing household chores we'd mutually agreed to divide. She said that was my choice, but the inequity would remain documented in her household efficiency reports. She started tracking everything. Every time I did dishes, she noted the time and calculated the market rate. Every time she cleaned the bathroom, documented with timestamps and cost analysis. She kept a running tally of the supposed value difference between our contributions. At the end of each month, she'd send me a summary showing how much I theoretically owed her based on chore value discrepancies. The first month it was $47. She didn't actually ask for payment, but she included the figure in her monthly household financial summary. I ignored these reports. I kept doing my assigned chores, She kept doing hers. The apartment stayed clean. Everything functioned normally except for her increasingly detailed documentation of core economics. Then she started adjusting her core performance based on what she called value matching. If she calculated that I'd done $40 worth of chores in a week and she'd done $60 worth, she'd only do $40 worth the next week to balance it out. This meant she'd clean part of the bathroom but not all of it, vacuum some rooms but not others, do some dishes but leave the rest. She was deliberately doing partial chores to match what she'd calculated as fair economic value. I asked her to just do the chores she'd agreed to do. She said she was optimizing her labor output to match the value I was providing. If I wanted her to do more, I needed to either increase my own chore value or compensate her for the difference. I started doing extra chores just to keep the apartment livable. She documented this and adjusted her own contributions further downward. The more I did, the less she did, always maintaining what she calculated as economic equilibrium. We had multiple conversations about this. I explained that roommate chores aren't supposed to be a complex economic exchange, they're just basic maintenance of a shared space. She said, "Any shared resource allocation should be optimized for efficiency and fairness." I suggested, "We just hire a cleaning service and split the cost." She said that would be financially inefficient when we could do the work ourselves. I pointed out we weren't actually doing the work anymore because she kept calculating herself into doing less. She disagreed with my characterization and showed me her data proving she was doing exactly the proportional amount of work relative to my contributions. The fact that this left parts of the apartment dirty was a natural result of our unequal value provision. This went on for 6 weeks. The apartment got progressively messier as she continued optimizing her chore output downward based on complex value calculations. I kept doing what I could, but I also had a job and couldn't maintain the entire apartment alone. Finally, I told her I was moving out at the end of our lease. She asked why, and seemed genuinely surprised. I explained that living with someone who treats basic cleaning like a financial transaction wasn't working for me. She said she'd been trying to create a fair and efficient system. I said I'd been trying to just keep our apartment clean. We clearly had different priorities. She asked if I'd be willing to stay if we restructured the core value analysis. I said no. She seemed hurt and asked if there was anything she could do to change my mind. I suggested she could just do her assigned chores without calculating their market value. She said that seemed arbitrary and inefficient. I said then there was nothing to discuss. I moved out last month. I found a new place with a roommate who thinks dividing chores means dividing chores, not creating economic models of household labor markets. My former roommate texted me last week saying she'd found a new roommate and had implemented an improved core value system with better tracking metrics. She said the new system was much more sophisticated and asked if I wanted to see the documentation. I did not want to see the documentation. I wished her well and blocked her number. That story is over. The commitment to turning household cleaning into a complex economic framework, complete with market value analysis and optimization metrics, is genuinely impressive in the most exhausting way possible. Some people really will apply corporate finance principles to every aspect of life, including whether to vacuum the living room. Speaking of applying inappropriate frameworks to everyday situations, this next story involves a coworker who apparently believes workplace conversations require formal documentation. I work in a pretty casual office environment. About 30 people, mostly young professionals, relaxed dress code, and generally friendly workplace culture. People chat at their desks, have casual conversations in the break room, normal office social interaction. One of my coworkers is newer to the team, hired about 4 months ago. She's quiet, keeps to herself mostly, but seems competent at her job. I don't work directly with her, but we're in the same department. Last month, I was in the break room making coffee and she came in to use the microwave. I said good morning and asked how her weekend was. Standard office small talk. She pulled out her phone and started typing while I was talking. I figured she was checking a message and paused. She looked up and said she was just taking notes and I should continue. I asked what she was taking notes about. She said she documented all workplace conversations for reference and clarity. She asked me again how my weekend was. I said it was fine, trying to figure out if this was a joke. She typed something into her phone and asked if I'd done anything specific. I said I'd gone hiking. She asked, where? I told her the name of the trail. She typed this into her phone. Then she asked who I'd gone with, what time I'd started, and how long the hike took. I asked why she needed this information. She said she liked to have complete records of colleague interactions for future reference. She said it helped her remember people and build workplace relationships. I said I wasn't comfortable with her documenting my personal weekend activities. She seemed confused and said she was just making conversation notes, nothing invasive. I left the break room and went back to my desk. The interaction was weird, but I figured maybe she had some kind of memory issue and needed notes to keep track of conversations. 2 days later, I got an email from her with the subject line, Weekend Activity Discussion Summary. The email contained a detailed recap of our break room conversation, including direct quotes, timestamps, and follow-up questions about my hiking plans. She'd written it like a meeting summary, complete with action items. The action items were things like confirm trail difficulty rating and discuss hiking equipment preferences at next interaction. I didn't respond to the email. I wasn't sure how to respond to someone documenting casual small talk like it was a business meeting. The next week, I saw her in the parking lot and she asked if I'd received her conversation summary. I said I had. She asked if I had any corrections or additions. I said I didn't think casual conversations needed formal summaries. She said she found documentation helpful for maintaining relationship continuity. She asked if I preferred a different format for the summaries. I said I preferred no summaries at all. She asked how I kept track of ongoing social interactions without documentation. I said I just remembered conversations like a normal person. She pulled out a small notebook and wrote something down. I asked what she was writing. She said she was noting my preference for undocumented interactions so she could update her colleague communication protocols. This was all getting very strange. I told her she didn't need to document our conversation right now. She said she was almost done and asked me to hold on. She finished writing, then asked if we were still discussing my weekend or if we'd moved on to a new topic. I said I had to go and walked away. Over the next few weeks, I noticed she was doing this with multiple people. Break room conversations, hallway small talk, casual discussions at people's desks. She was documenting all of it. She'd send follow-up emails to everyone summarizing their conversations. People started comparing the emails in a group chat. Everyone had detailed summaries of mundane interactions. Someone who'd mentioned their lunch plans got a 3-paragraph email recapping the conversation and asking follow-up questions about their sandwich preferences. Someone who'd commented on the weather received a documented weather discussion summary with their stated opinions about precipitation. It was bizarre but mostly harmless. People started avoiding casual conversation with her because nobody wanted a formal email summary of discussing their morning coffee. Then she started including other people in her conversation summaries. If I mentioned another colleague during a conversation with her, that person would get copied on the summary email. I told her I was working on a project with someone from another department. She sent a summary email to both of us, documenting my casual mention of the project, including the other person with questions about timeline and deliverables. This person had no idea what she was talking about. They replied asking why they were included on an email about a casual conversation they weren't part of. She explained she was documenting workplace relationship networks and wanted to keep all relevant parties informed. People started actively avoiding her. Nobody wanted to be documented, summarized, and included in elaborate email chains about small talk. She noticed the avoidance and sent a department-wide email explaining her conversation documentation system. She said she'd been building a comprehensive database of colleague interactions to improve team communication and relationship management. She'd created categories for different types of conversations and was tracking topics, frequency, and relationship development metrics. She had a spreadsheet showing who talked to whom about what subjects and how often. She thought this would be helpful. She was presenting it like a valuable resource she'd created for the team. Our manager called a meeting to address the situation. She explained that documenting casual workplace conversations wasn't appropriate and made people uncomfortable. My coworker seemed genuinely confused. She said she was just trying to be thorough and professional. The manager explained that thoroughness and professionalism didn't require summarizing someone's lunch plans in a formal email. My coworker asked how she was supposed to maintain workplace relationships without proper documentation. The manager said through normal social interaction and memory. She asked if there were specific documentation guidelines she should follow. The manager said the guideline was to not document casual conversations at all. My coworker looked distressed. She said she'd been working hard on her relationship database and felt like her efforts weren't being appreciated. The manager told her to delete the database and stop sending conversation summary emails. She asked if she could at least keep personal notes for her own reference. The manager said, as long as she wasn't emailing them to people or making others uncomfortable, personal notes were fine. The emails stopped, but I still see her typing on her phone whenever anyone talks to her. She's still documenting, just not sharing it anymore. I don't talk to her unless I absolutely have to. Neither does anyone else. She's isolated herself by trying to systematize social interaction. That story is over. The dedication to documenting every casual workplace conversation, like it's a formal business meeting, complete with summaries and action items for discussing sandwich preferences, is impressively unsettling. Some people really will try to optimize human interaction through spreadsheets and databases, then wonder why nobody wants to chat with them anymore. Speaking of optimization attempts gone wrong, this next story involves someone who discovered their gym has some very creative approaches to membership policies. I joined a gym about 6 months ago. Nothing fancy, just a standard commercial gym with cardio equipment, weights, and some classes. Month-to-month membership, reasonable prices, convenient location near my apartment. The first few months were fine. I went 3 or 4 times a week, used the equipment, no problems. Standard gym experience. Then the gym hired new management. They sent an email announcing enhanced member services and improved facility protocols. I figured this meant maybe new equipment or extended hours. 2 weeks after the management change, I showed up for my usual morning workout and couldn't get through the entrance gate. My membership card wouldn't scan. I went to the front desk and explained the issue. The staff member checked my account and said my membership had been suspended for protocol violations. I asked what protocol I'd violated. She pulled up my account notes and said I'd been flagged for inefficient equipment usage patterns. I asked what that meant. She said the new management was monitoring equipment usage to optimize gym flow, and I'd been using machines in a non-optimal sequence. I asked her to explain how there could be a wrong sequence for using gym equipment. She showed me a diagram of the recommended equipment circuit. Apparently, the new management had determined an ideal order for using machines to maximize workout efficiency and minimize equipment bottlenecks. I'd been using equipment in the wrong order. This had been documented over multiple visits and flagged as a pattern of inefficient behavior. I asked if I was being told I had to use gym equipment in a specific sequence. She said it was strongly recommended for optimal facility operations. I asked what happened if I didn't follow the recommended sequence. She said continued inefficient patterns could result in membership restrictions or termination. I asked if she was serious. She said the new management was very focused on operational efficiency. I asked to speak with the manager. She said the manager was implementing the new protocols across all member accounts and wasn't available for individual discussions. She offered to email me the official equipment usage guidelines. I left without working out. The email arrived that afternoon. It was a 12-page document outlining the correct order for using every piece of equipment in the gym, with time limits and transition protocols between stations. There were diagrams showing the optimal flow pattern through the gym floor, color-coded sections indicating peak efficiency zones, detailed instructions on rest period placement and acceptable deviation margins. The document also included my personal usage history showing all the times I'd violated the optimal sequence. Each violation was marked in red with a efficiency penalty score. I called the gym and asked to cancel my membership. The person on the phone said I couldn't cancel while I was suspended for protocol violations. I had to resolve the violations first. I asked how to resolve violations for using a treadmill before the elliptical instead of after. She said I needed to attend a mandatory equipment usage training session to demonstrate understanding of optimal gym flow patterns. I hung up and went to the gym in person. I asked to speak with the manager. He came out and I explained that I wanted to cancel my membership. He asked why I wanted to cancel. I said I didn't want to work out at a gym that required me to use equipment in a specific order. He seemed disappointed and said the new protocols were designed to improve everyone's experience. I said they were improving my experience by making me want to leave. He asked if I'd considered the benefits of optimized equipment flow. I said I'd considered the benefits of working out at a gym that didn't monitor my exercise sequence. He said most members appreciated the structure once they understood the efficiency gains. I said I'd prefer to just cancel. He pulled up my account and said I'd signed an annual contract. I said my membership was month to month. He said the new management had converted all month-to-month memberships to annual contracts as part of the enhanced service package. I asked when this conversion happened. He said 2 weeks ago when the new protocols were implemented. I asked how they could change my contract without my consent. He said it was in the updated terms of service everyone had been emailed. I checked my email and found a message with the subject Updated Facility Guidelines that I'd deleted without reading. Buried in that email was a notice that continued use of the facility after the protocol implementation date constituted agreement to new terms including annual contract conversion. I'd worked out once after the email was sent. Apparently, that one workout had converted my month-to-month membership into a year-long contract. I asked to see the cancellation policy. He showed me a document explaining that annual contracts could only be canceled with 90 days' notice and a termination fee of $200. I asked if he seriously expected me to pay $200 to cancel a contract I never agreed to. He said I'd agreed by using the facility after terms were updated. I told him that was deceptive practice and probably illegal. He said their legal team had reviewed all the new policies and they were fully compliant. I left and called my credit card company to dispute the charges. They said they'd investigate, but I'd need to work with the merchant first. I sent a formal cancellation letter to the gym citing deceptive practices and refusing to pay the termination fee. They responded saying my cancellation request had been received and my final bill including the fee would be charged in 90 days. I disputed the charge again. My credit card company sided with the gym because I'd technically used the facility after updated terms were sent. I ended up paying a lawyer $300 to send him a letter threatening action for deceptive contract modification. The gym agreed to waive the termination fee and cancel immediately if I signed a release agreeing not to pursue further action. I signed it. I just wanted out. I joined a different gym that doesn't monitor my equipment usage patterns or convert contracts without clear consent. I still get emails from the old gym about their enhanced member services and optimal facility protocols. Each email includes my former efficiency scores and suggestions for improvement. I unsubscribed, but the emails keep coming. I've marked them as spam. They still arrive weekly. That story is over. The ambition of secretly converting month-to-month gym memberships into annual contracts through buried email clauses, then enforcing efficiency protocols on equipment usage patterns, is genuinely spectacular in its terribleness. Some businesses really will find the most complicated way to drive away customers while calling it enhanced service. Speaking of enhanced services nobody asked for, this next story involves a coffee shop that apparently believes loyalty programs require extensive personal data collection. I've been going to the same coffee shop for about 2 years. It's a local place, independently owned, decent coffee, convenient location near my office. I stop in most mornings before work. They've always had a simple punch card loyalty program. Buy 9 coffees, get the 10th free. Standard setup. Paper cards they stamp at the register. Last month they announced they were upgrading to a digital loyalty program. The owner sent an email saying they were modernizing their customer experience and launching a new app. I figured this meant a digital punch card instead of paper. More convenient, harder to lose, seemed like a reasonable update. I downloaded the app and started the registration process. It asked for my name, email, and phone number. Standard account creation stuff. Then it asked for my home address. I skipped it assuming it was optional. The app wouldn't let me proceed without entering an address. I went to the counter and asked if the address was required. The barista said yes. The new system needed complete customer profiles for the loyalty program to function properly. I asked why a coffee loyalty program needed my home address. She said it was for delivery services they might offer in the future. I said I didn't want delivery, I just wanted to track my coffee purchases. She said I still needed to complete the profile. I entered a fake address just to get past the form. Then the app asked for my birthday, occupation, and annual income range, all marked as required fields. I asked the barista again why the coffee shop needed my income information. She said the new system was gathering customer data to improve service personalization. I said I didn't need personalized service, I needed my coffee tracked. She said I had to complete the profile to use the loyalty program. I left without completing registration. I paid for my coffee without the loyalty benefit and went to work annoyed. The next morning, I tried to pay without using the app. The barista said they discontinued the paper punch cards. All loyalty tracking was digital now. I asked if I could just buy coffee without joining the program. She said yes, but the prices had changed. Digital loyalty members paid the old prices. Non-members paid 20% more. I asked when prices had increased. She said when the app launched, loyalty members were getting the standard price. Everyone else was paying a non-member premium. My coffee that used to cost $4 now cost $4.80 without the app. I paid the new price and emailed the owner asking about the price change. He responded saying the pricing structure was part of the enhanced customer experience. Digital loyalty members received preferred pricing in exchange for participating in the customer data program. I replied saying I didn't want to exchange my personal information for coffee discounts. He said that was my choice, but the non-member pricing would remain. I stopped going to that coffee shop. I found a different place that sold coffee without requiring my income bracket and birthday. A week later, I got an email from the original shop saying they'd noticed my absence and wanted to offer me a free coffee to try the new digital loyalty program. I ignored it. They sent 3 more reminder emails over the next 2 weeks, each one explaining the benefits of the app and encouraging me to complete my customer profile. I unsubscribed from their mailing list. The emails kept coming. I marked them as spam. They sent text messages instead. I'd never given them my phone number. They must have gotten it from my previous email correspondence with the owner. The texts asked if I'd experienced any issues with the app and offered technical support for completing my registration. I replied, asking them to stop contacting me. They sent an automated response saying my feedback had been recorded and I'd been enrolled in their customer outreach program for profile completion assistance. I blocked their number. They started calling from different numbers. Always the same automated message about completing my digital loyalty profile. I finally called the shop directly and asked to speak with the owner. He answered and I explained that I didn't want to join the app program and needed them to stop contacting me. He said, the outreach was automated and designed to help customers who were having difficulty with registration. I said I wasn't having difficulty. I was declining to participate. He asked why I was resistant to joining when it would save me 20% on every purchase. I said I didn't want to provide personal information to a coffee shop. He seemed offended and said they were a trusted local business, not some corporate data harvester. I said, trusted local businesses don't require income information for punch cards. He explained the data was used to improve customer experience and develop targeted service offerings. I said I didn't want targeted service offerings. I wanted coffee. He said the old model wasn't sustainable and the new data-driven approach was necessary for the business to compete. I said competing by charging loyal customers more unless they surrendered personal data wasn't a business model I wanted to support. He said I was being unreasonable about basic customer information. I said requiring income brackets and home addresses for coffee loyalty was unreasonable. We went in circles for 10 minutes before I finally just said I wouldn't be returning and asked him to remove me from all contact lists. He said he'd note my account as inactive, but the automated outreach might continue for a few weeks while the system updated. That was a month ago. I still get occasional texts about completing my profile. The coffee shop is still there. I walk past it every day on my way to the new place I go to. They've added signs in the windows advertising their advanced digital loyalty program and personalized customer experience. The signs show what look like analytics dashboards with customer preference graphs. I'm glad I left when I did. I don't need my coffee shop tracking my purchasing patterns and building data profiles. That story is over. The evolution from simple paper punch cards to mandatory income disclosure for loyalty pricing is genuinely remarkable in its overreach. Some businesses really will convince themselves that extensive personal data collection is essential customer service, then automate harassment campaigns when people decline to participate. Speaking of automation and harassment, this next story involves an HOA that apparently believes neighborhood management requires military precision. I bought a house in a planned community about a year ago. The HOA seemed reasonable during the buying process. Standard rules about lawn maintenance and exterior modifications, nothing too restrictive. The monthly fees were manageable and the neighborhood was well maintained. Good schools, quiet streets, exactly what I was looking for. 3 months after I moved in, the HOA board changed leadership. New president, new rules committee, new approach to community management. They sent out a welcome letter explaining their vision for enhanced neighborhood standards. It included updated guidelines for property maintenance and community participation expectations. The letter was 23 pages long. It outlined everything from acceptable lawn height ranges to approved door wreath styles. There were diagrams showing proper garbage can placement and charts defining acceptable vehicle parking angles. I skimmed it and figured most of it was suggestions rather than requirements. I kept my lawn mowed and my house maintained and didn't worry too much about the details. 2 weeks later, I got a violation notice. My lawn height was 0.3 inches above the maximum acceptable range. The notice included a photo of my lawn with a measurement overlay showing the excess height. Someone had measured my grass with precision tools and documented it photographically with measurement annotations. The notice said I had 48 hours to correct the violation or face a $50 fine. I mowed my lawn that afternoon. 3 days later, another violation notice. My garbage cans were positioned 4 inches forward of the approved setback line. Again, with photographic evidence showing the measurement discrepancy, I moved my garbage cans. The next week, I got a notice that my car was parked at a 17-degree angle instead of the approved perpendicular or parallel positions. Someone was monitoring my property constantly and measuring everything against the new guidelines. Every minor deviation resulted in a formal violation notice with documentation. I went to an HOA meeting to ask about the enforcement approach. The new president explained they'd implemented a comprehensive compliance monitoring system to maintain neighborhood standards. They'd hired a property management company that specialized in HOA enforcement. This company had staff who drove through the neighborhood daily documenting any guideline deviations. The president showed slides of their monitoring technology. They were using drones for aerial property assessment and measurement tools for precise compliance verification. I asked if this level of monitoring was really necessary. He said maintaining property values required strict adherence to community standards. I pointed out that my lawn being 0.3 inches too tall didn't affect property values. He disagreed and showed data correlating enforcement rates with neighborhood value metrics. Other homeowners at the meeting expressed similar concerns. Everyone had received multiple violation notices for tiny infractions. Garbage can angles, doormat sizes, flower pot colors. The president said the high violation rate proved the monitoring system was working. They were identifying issues that had previously gone unnoticed. Someone asked about the cost of the monitoring service. The president said they'd increased HOA fees to cover it. Our monthly fees had gone up 40% to fund the compliance program. I hadn't noticed the increase because it was bundled with my mortgage. But looking at the breakdown, nearly half my HOA fees were now going to pay for daily drone surveillance and violation monitoring. I asked if we could vote on continuing the program. The president said the board had authority to implement management policies without homeowner votes. Over the next month, I received 14 violation notices. My porch light was 3% brighter than approved specifications. My mailbox flag angle was incorrect. My driveway had a small oil stain visible from aerial photography. Each violation came with photos, measurements, and deadline for correction. Most were things I couldn't fix immediately even if I wanted to. How do you instantly change the brightness of an existing porch light? The fines started adding up. $50 per violation if not corrected within 48 hours. I was getting multiple violations per week. I contacted a lawyer about the HOA's enforcement practices. He reviewed my violation notices and said while HOAs had broad authority, some of these measurements seemed unreasonably precise. He sent a letter to the HOA questioning the validity of violations based on drone measurements and suggesting the enforcement program might constitute harassment. The HOA responded by sending me a notice that I was in violation of community standards for engaging in legal action against the association. This apparently violated a clause about neighborhood harmony and cooperative dispute resolution. The fine for this meta violation was $500. They were fining me for hiring a lawyer to question their fines. My lawyer said this was definitely overreach and we could challenge it, but litigation would cost more than just paying the fines. I paid the fines and started looking for a new house. I found a place in a neighborhood with a minimal HOA that only enforced basics like extreme property neglect. I listed my house for sale. The HOA sent a notice that I needed approval before listing. The approval process required submitting my listing photos for guideline compliance verification. The realtor photos showed a small garden decoration in my yard that wasn't on the approved decorations list. The HOA denied my listing approval until I removed it. I removed the decoration. They approved my listing. Then they sent notice that having a for sale sign violated visual pollution guidelines. I needed special permission to post sale signage. The permission required a 40-page application with photos, property value justification, and projected sale timeline. Processing time was 30 days. I posted the sign anyway and accepted the fine. My house sold quickly to someone who didn't read the HOA documents carefully. I disclosed everything to the buyer, but they thought I was exaggerating. They bought the house anyway. I moved out 2 months ago. I drove through the old neighborhood last week and saw they've installed permanent surveillance cameras on every street corner. The new monitoring system provides real-time violation detection. Automated notices are generated the moment any property deviation is detected. I don't miss it. My new neighborhood lets me park at any angle I want, and my garbage cans can be wherever makes sense. That story is over. Well, there you have it. Another night, another collection of stories that prove reality is definitely stranger than anything we could make up. From neighbors who develop elaborate package theft philosophies to gyms that monitor equipment usage sequences, these tales remind us that somewhere out there, someone is probably creating an unnecessarily complex system for something that should be simple. Whether you're here for the background noise, dealing with insomnia, or just enjoying the chaos of other people's lives, I hope these stories helped you unwind, or at least made you feel better about your own situation. If your biggest problem today was a coworker documenting your breathing patterns, or an HOA measuring your grass with precision tools, well, at least you're not alone in dealing with completely unreasonable people. Thanks for sticking around through all these wild tales. If you enjoyed tonight's collection, consider subscribing because I've got plenty more where these came from. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere out there, someone is probably getting a violation notice for parking at the wrong angle.